The one that says the new marks are on it. It's the only book you need. They're in the hallway.
You can grab one from up here if you like.
I think they're right below the seats.
Take one off my beam.
The Moxers?
Yeah, why don't you put them below the seats?
Ah,
No, that's the Flemish, that's the.
that should be out in the hall.
Here,
William, it's
you know what, here's one, I'll get you.
Yeah, it's right next,
I'm
it's
good.
next to the red book, that's the one.
Yeah, no, we're good, thank you, yeah, thank you very much.
It's the same one.
We're live.
You know, you.
Be good if we get one more person in here.
Yeah. Yeah, Marty is here. You guys can find him. Wait.
Oh, I have an extra one too.
Yeah, close to it.
You're the 10th one, Marty. She'll be 11. This one goes to 11.
Have you started school, David?
Yes, about 2 weeks ago.
And how's it going?
Pretty good. I mean, I don't roam through the classroom. I kind of just stand, in front of the classroom and stuff like that. Everything is all digital, so
So
And do the kids learn that?
are we starting on,
they all do. Everyone does.
we doing Matovo?
What school are you at?
Greenwood High School.
I think we're just going to the English reading for a bar.
This one here? Yeah, yeah, because the barcode's on the next page.
Yeah, and we got a filter, and we get the windows
Hmm.
open, so. I feel pretty
That was a choir thing.
Nostalgia.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. Chag Sameach, Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, Chag Sameach.
Welcome to all the people in the multipurpose room, and people who are racing to get into the gazebo, and all you internet people at home.
Exactly.
We're going to start. Incidentally, if you're at home, I hope you picked up one of the books.
But if not, we'll leave the light on for you.
Right. So let's read together on page 17 as the mob fills out the room. You know, we need a light here.
Yeah.
Okay. We're starting on page 17, and what I'd like to do is I'll read the first section, you read the second, and we'll just, wherever there's a space, that's where you stop. Okay? We're on page 17. Unfailing light follows day, which will again pierce the shadows with ever-widening arcs of light.
The revolutions of Earth, planets, galaxies, like the infinitesimal atomic particles, radiating energy in their orbits and around their nuclei, fill our minds with wonder.
Their precision and predictability tell us that we confront a reality vastly greater than any formula can contain.
O mysterious, wise, manifoldly self-revealing God, O life within creation and beyond it, as we contemplate and observe nature, we pray for your reign over us, who place ourselves under your law.
May the awesome, creative, and ordering power which we barely glimpse or comprehend help us to become what our potential promises.
May our lives acquire form, order, and meaning, where now aimlessness, willfulness, and chaos threaten.
O Lord, in the daily rotations of this planet, we behold and hail a vision of your kingship. Rule over us by day and strengthen us at nightfall. And I'd like to invite everyone who can comfortably do it to rise as we begin the evening service. Page 18.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Vaed.
Arach Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Vaed.
Please be seated. We're on page 19, and I'd like to do the same kind of responsive reading on the left side where it says Ma'ariv Aravim. Praise to you, Lord our God, King of the universe, whose word brings on the dusk of evening.
Your wisdom opens the gates of dawn. Your understanding regulates time and season.
The stars above follow their appointed rounds in response to your divine will.
You create day and night. You alternate darkness and light.
You remove the day and bring on the night. You separate one from the other.
We call you Lord of heavenly hosts. You are our living God.
May you rule over us as you rule over nature. Praise to you, O Lord, who brings the evening dusk.
Mavriyo, Mulmevi Laila, Umavdil bin Mulvein Laila, Adonai Tzivot Shemo, Elachai V'Kayam, Tamidim Lach Aleinu Leolam Vaed, Baruch Atah Adonai,
Baruch Shema.
Hamari Varavi.
Amen. We continue on page 20 with the second blessing before the Shema, and after that we go directly to Shema Yisrael on page 22.
Sing with me. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha avra, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, odanu limadeta. Hakin Adonai Eloheinu, b'shachbeinu u'b'kulmeinu, nasiach b'chukecha, v'nizmach b'divrei toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, li'olam va'ed. Kim chayenu v'yorech yaminu, v'yorech yameinu, v'hem negeh, negeh yomam, yomam v'layla. V'yavadecha, atas mimenu yolamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Ama Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'yahavitah, Eid Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu ha'devarim ha'ileh, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom ha'levavecha, v'shinadam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivnecha b'beitecha, v'lechnecha b'derech, v'shachvecha u'v'kumecha, v'kashadam le'oda yadecha, v'yilad odavod b'neinecha, v'chidavdam, amezuzot beitecha, u'vishe'arecha.
And the next two paragraphs on pages 24 and 26 are silent. Jesus.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We continue on page 29. Let's read responsively on page 29. True and certain it is that there is one God and there is none like him.
It is he who redeemed us from the might of tyrants and delivered us from slavery to freedom.
Great are the things that God has done. His wonders are without number.
He brought forth Israel from Egyptian bondage. He has been our hope in every generation.
May he continue his protecting care over Israel and guard all his children from disaster.
When the children of Israel beheld his might, they gave thanks to him and praised his name.
They accepted his sovereignty willingly and sang in joyous thanksgiving.
Moses and the children of Israel proclaimed in great exaltation.
Who is like you, O Lord, among the mighty? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, revered in praises, and doing wonders?
When you rescued Israel at the sea, your children beheld your power.
This is my God, they exclaimed, and said, the Lord shall reign forever and ever.
As you delivered Israel from a mightier power, so may you redeem all your children from oppression.
Praise to you, O Lord, Redeemer of Israel.
Malchut Bratzon, Kiblu Aleihem, Moshe uvenei Israel, Lechanu Shira, Simcho Araba, V'amru Chulam,
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh.
Norat Elon, Osef Elem, Malchutcha Rav Banecha, Bokei Hayam Livnei Moshe, Zeli Anu V'Yamiru, Adonai Eloh Le'olam Va'ed. V'ne'emar, Kivad Adonai Yaakov, U'galam Yad Chazak Mimenu, Baruch Adonai, God Israel.
I think we have some choir members in the crowd here.
That we do.
We're going to continue now on page 32, but then we're going to go back to page 30 and after that. But on page 32, and we'll do it the same way. Help us, O God, to lie down in peace, but teach us that peace means more than quiet.
Remind us that if we are to be at peace at night, we must take heed how we live by day.
Grant us the peace that comes from honest dealing, so that no fear of discovery will haunt our sleep.
Rid us of resentments and hatreds, which rob us of the peace we crave.
Liberate us from enslaving habits which disturb us and give us no rest.
May we inflict no pain, bring no shame, and seek no profit from another's loss.
May we so live that we can face the whole world with sincerity.
May we feel no remorse at night for what we have done during the day.
May we lie down tonight in peace and awaken tomorrow to a richer and fuller life. Now we're going to go back to page 30 to catch the end of Hashkivenu.
Ufros aleinu sukat zamecha, Baruch Adonai, Aparei sukat shalom, aleinu, V'al kol Amo Yisrael, V'al Yerushalayim.
It had a rhythm to it. I want to keep going, but we're going to continue on page 33, in the second half of the page where it says, to proclaim this day, Tikuch b'chodesh shofar.
Tiku v'chodesh shofar, b'gatzeh liyom chaginu, ki chok leYisraelu, mishpat leElohi Yaakov.
Sound the shofar on the new moon at the time appointed for our new year. Its observance is a law for Israel ordained by the God of Jacob. We are continuing now on page 34 with the Chatzi Kaddish that leads up to tonight's Amidah.
Yikada, Vikada, Shemiraba, Bialmadi, Rachirude, Viameli, Mahude, Bechayechon, Uviomechon, Ufchaye, Dechobed Israel, Bagal Alvis Margarib, Vimeru, Amen. Yesh Meiraba Mevorach, Li'olam Olam Egamaya, Yidbarach, Yidbarach, Vishtabach, Vidba Vidma Vinaseh, V'yidadar, V'yidale, V'yidale, V'yidala, Shemei de Kodesha, Rechu, Leila, Leila, Vigo Birlachada, V'jirada, Tuj Bechada, V'nechemada, Damir on Be'alema, V'meru, Amen.
And we remain standing for this evening's Amidah prayer, the standing prayer. Starts on page 36, ends on page 46. It's a silent Amidah. You can add whatever's in your heart to whatever's on the page. We continue on page 50, where we sort of wrap things up a little bit with Kaddish Shalem that ends this part of the service.
Yitkara v'yitkara shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'almadi vrachir l'devi yamlich malchute b'chayecha.
B'chayecha,
v'yomecha.
v'yomecha.
v'chayedecho
Beit
b'Yisrael
Yisrael.
ma'agala.
Ma'agala.
v'zman karim.
Zman karim.
v'yiheberu.
Amen.
Yehishmei rabba mevarach. Li'olam lo me'omeah. Yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yidbar. V'yidrahma me'yinas. V'yidadar.
Yitadar.
V'yidaleh.
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 Shemei rekodesha.
Brechu.
Ve'ela olela migo berchata v'shirada. Tuz bechada v'nechemada. Damiran be'olema v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yitkavel zalod anuvadon becho Yisrael. Kadamavon divishmaya v'yimeru.
Amen.
Yishlav maraba mitshmaya v'chayim aleinu v'yava
Yava.
Yisrael.
Yisrael.
V'yimeru.
Amen.
Aseh shalom b'Roma, u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yam kol Yisrael v'yimeru. Amen.
You may be seated. Well, Chag Sameach. Shana Tova. Umituka. That means it's sweet, bria, full of health. No, yes, it's really great to see you. It's really great to see so many of you in person. Who'd have imagined Rosh Hashanah services under these conditions? One thing I'm pretty sure of, though, it's better than last year. There was nobody here. Just me and the cantor, and I think Colleen, the tech guy. Now, for those of you who didn't know, we actually taped enlarged photographs of the people who come every week, and we pasted them on the chairs that you're sitting in, at the places that they sat in. That was the congregation. We did manage a few events over the year. We had a big shofar blowout in the parking lot. We had a Hanukkah candle lighting in the parking lot. We had Women's League had a bunch of great gift shop sales. And at least we got to see each other for a few minutes. So I'm not kidding when I say Baruchim Habaim. It's welcome, it's good to see you. Now, we're not just in this room tonight. I don't think there's anybody in the overflow room right now, is there? Okay, so we're all in here. But we have, we're not, we have the potential to be not just here in the Sporn Chapel. We have a couple of local remote stations, the MPR, the multi-purpose room, for when we get so many people in here that they have to watch out there. And for those who are not fully vaccinated, we're going to have a monitor in the gazebo, which some of you might remember as the sukkah, but we can't use it as a sukkah anymore because they put a roof on it. That was before my time. And of course, a big shout out to all you people on the internet at home. We're happy you can participate with us at home. So I reckon the total number of people with us today is about 4,000 pairs of eyes. And we're getting great ratings. Now, in the past, I have sometimes presented high holiday talks in groups of 3, 2 for Rosh Hashanah and 1 for Yom Kippur. We've done things like truth, justice, and the American, truth, justice, and peace. It's a phrase from Pirkei Avot in the Mishnah. And we've done Torah, Avodah, Gimilut Chasadim, that is study, worship, and acts of loving kindness, like in the song, Al Shlosha Devarim, And there's also from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our ancestors. We've done tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, like in the Unatana Tokef prayer. We've talked about a number of triads or trinities, not that one, no. And we don't do that one here. And this high holiday season, we're going to discuss another one of these triptychs, God, Torah, and Israel. I wanted to give God top billing, unlike Max Diamond's book, Jews, God, and History. He didn't give God top billing. Abraham Joshua Heschel, among others, thought that Judaism revolved around our themes of God, Torah, and Israel. Heschel was one of the preeminent Jewish scholars of the last century. He escaped from Europe, but much of his family did not. Today, he's remembered for a number of books that demonstrate his learned mystical approach and for having marched from Selma to Montgomery with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And someone on that day challenged him, saying, "Rabbi, why aren't you in synagogue?" And his response was, "I'm praying with my legs." A lot of people think he said with my feet, but I checked it out, it's legs. So when do we sense God's presence? You might answer, in nature, like Spinoza's God. We're going to talk about God tomorrow. Or maybe we sense God's presence when we're in a foxhole, like Franz Rosenzweig, whose work, The Star of Redemption, was informed by his experience in the German army. For much of the First World War, Rosenzweig served as an anti-aircraft unit stationed on the Balkan front. There are some who think that his experience in war influenced his writings. Now, Heschel's answer is that we sense God in Torah. We'll talk more about Torah on Wednesday. Regarding Israel, the people, the tribe, he said that being part of this people was like living in a holy dimension, in a spiritual order. Our share in holiness we acquire by living in the Jewish community. What do we do as individuals? What we do as individuals may be a trivial episode, but what we attain as Israel causes us to grow into the infinite. And we'll talk more about the people of Israel on Yom Kippur. So, are God, Torah, and Israel on the same level? Is there a hierarchy? Or is there a dialogue between them that we need to look at more closely? The way Heschel asks that, it would seem pretty clear the answer is C, what he called dialectic relationship. Dialogue, but different parts of the Jewish world have elevated different parts of the triad. The top of the hierarchy for the Reform movement, he says, is God. That might surprise you, but the idea is that the movement has, quote, concentrated on ethical monotheism as the essence of Judaism. For secular nationalism, meaning Zionism, presumably, the people of Israel are the central concern. For what Heschel calls neo-orthodoxy, it's Torah and the law. They're eager to defend traditional observance. What about our conservative movement? Heschel doesn't mention the conservative movement, which is kind of weird, since he taught at the Jewish Theological Seminary, the home base of conservative Judaism, for many, many years. So maybe our movement in the middle stands for the perfect balance. I might actually challenge that, but not now, not this year. The sages, of course, discussed the relationships between God and Torah, God and Israel, and Torah in Israel, and the interplay of all three, and they did that extensively. Rabbi Akiva said that the Torah exists in heaven as well as on earth. Revelation means Torah from heaven, God's gift from on high, Torah mina shamayim. It was a gift that transcended the cosmos. The rabbis said that in deciding to create the universe, God actually looked into the Torah first. He consulted with the Torah. The Torah was there when he was going to create the world, and he looked into it to get the blueprint of what to do. And more than that, they thought the Torah was essential for God's continued existence, as are we. They taught that if we hadn't accepted the Torah at Sinai, the cosmos would have returned to chaos. That gives us a lot to live up to. Keep that in mind as we progress through these days of awe. Now, you've heard me say that Judaism is not a biblical religion per se. So for the rabbis who got rabbinic Judaism started, the story in Genesis just wasn't enough. They took the scarce hints in the Torah about what Rosh Hashanah is about and turned it into a celebration of creation. So happy birthday, world. Happy Earth Day. Sorry, there's not enough room on the honey cake for all the candles. 5,782 of them. Another development from the rare verses that call Rosh Hashanah a day of sounding the shofar, there's 2 verses, that's all there is in the Torah about it, Yom Truah. Behind that was the recreation of God's coronation as king, another one of the main themes of the day. Sounding the shofar was what happened when kings were crowned in ancient times. The sages turned a couple of verses into the celebration of God as king. For the early rabbis, while creation was an excellent start, the land and the water and the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above, and even Shabbat were a prelude to the revelation of Torah at Sinai. That's when we became a people, so Torah could be realized. Medieval commentator extraordinaire Rashi says the people who left Egypt arrived at Sinai as a ragtag, disparate group. They left Egypt they left Sinai. They got to Sinai as a bunch of people. They left Sinai as a single people, a free people, a free people. Now, you hear a lot about freedom these days, but there's no rabbinic understanding of freedom without responsibility. We escaped Egypt with the help of a mighty metaphoric hand and an outstretched allegorical arm, and Torah was our purpose. Study the Torah so much you forget what the Torah says, actually, about treating other people. The sage Rabbah said, when a person is judged, when he has his entrance interview to the world to come, the next life, he is asked, did you deal honestly in business? He's not asked, did you daven 3 times a day? He's not asked, did you observe all the laws of Shabbat? He's not asked, did you keep a kosher home? Were you honest? They're going to ask. Did you set aside time for the study of Torah? That is, did you keep learning? Did you grow? Did you engage in procreation? Did you try to make the world a better place by putting better people in it? Did you hone your intellectual skills? Did you learn by using deductive reasoning? Did you ask a lot of questions? And to this Heschel adds, we are closer to God when we're asking questions than when we think we have all the answers. To this, Rabbi Joseph of Trani, medieval Talmudist, warned that the study of Torah is worthless when it's not accompanied by the awe and fear of heaven. Without the goal of reaching a higher level of consciousness or becoming a better person, Torah study won't get you anywhere. Learning for prestige or honor or money is faking it. And of course, we heard in the Parsha last week, Torah is not just in heaven. By awe and fear of heaven, Rabbi Joseph means God. But God doesn't want to remain in heaven. Heschel quotes God saying words like, you might know, make me a sanctuary so that I may dwell among them. God is here in our chapel. God is in the NPR, and God willing, God will be in the gazebo. We don't want to be socially distant from each other, and we don't want to be socially distant from God. And from what I just quoted, God doesn't want to be socially distant from us. He wants to dwell among us. After all, we go way back. Our people has been around for a long time. In rabbinic literature, a sage once said to Elijah the prophet, 2 things I love wholeheartedly, the Torah and Israel, but I'm not sure which I love more. And Elijah responded, the accepted opinion seems to suggest that the Torah is more important, as it says in Proverbs, the Lord made me as the beginning of his way. Elijah then continued, but I think that Israel is most important, because Jeremiah says Israel is holy to the Lord, the first fruits of his harvest. In other words, since the people of Israel existed first before the Torah was given, it has a sort of beloved seniority over the Torah. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levian, a Talmudic rabbi from what used to be called Lydda, which is actually Lod, near now what is Tel Aviv. He said, Israel can never die, not in this world and not in the next. He thought a world without Torah would be a world without Jews, without Israel, the people. And a world without Israel would be a world without the God of Israel. Our understanding of God, Torah, and Israel is an evolving thing. Contemporary Jewish theologian Judith Plaskow says the concepts Torah, Israel, and God are mutually reinforcing. She believes that the way we understand God has a profound impact on how we, the people of Israel, a community of women and men, learn and transmit our heritage, Torah. A more inclusive understanding of Torah and a community in which women are not other stem from a less androcentric understanding of God. In other words, says Plaskow, our triangle is a circle. 3 heady topics: God, Torah, and Israel. How do they fit together? I conclude tonight by returning to Franz Rosenzweig, whose major work, The Star of Redemption, is a description of the relationship between God, humanity, and the world, as they are connected by creation, revelation, and redemption. For this, we have to go back to the triangle model. Sorry, ladies. If one makes a triangle with God at the top and humanity and the Torah below, and we put another triangle pointed down with creation, revelation, and redemption, well, you just made a Star of David. I've seen other versions of this star with the triangles like the ones I mentioned at the beginning of this talk. If you take the ideals of truth, justice, and peace and flip it over a triangle of Torah, Avodah, and Gemilut Chasadim, you have a star. Or take a seasonally appropriate one like Tshuva, Tefillah, and Tzedakah, and put it in the mix with God, Torah, and Israel. You have a star. Now, Rosenzweig did not write the polyhedron of redemption. He wrote the Star of Redemption. So I'm inviting you to pick the values that you cherish and make your own star. Base it on your own shifting priorities in the coming year. See if you can make a star that leads to a sense of redemption, of freeing yourself from your own spiritual bonds. Just remember that for Rosenzweig, it all leads to redemption, freedom, coming back to the land or coming back from Egypt. Redemption doesn't happen on some metaphysical plane. It happens in the here and the now. We may not get there in our upcoming discussions, but I hope they all add in a positive way to your feelings of being part of or associated with this eternal people. So if you get the yearning to look at your life and explore the things you've learned, maybe 1 or 2 of those triangles will help you understand just where you are in this holiday season of introspection. If you get the itch, we'll scratch the surface. Shana Tova. We continue with Kiddush on page 56.
Please rise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romemanu mikol ha'shon, v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav. V'titein lanu Adonai Eloheinu b'yahava, et yom hazikaron hazeh, Yom Teruah Mikra Kodesh Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim Kivanu B'charta Ve'otanu Kidashta Mikol Ha'amim U'devarcha Emet V'kayam Lad Baruch Atah Adonai
Baruch Shemo.
Melech HaKol Haaretz Mikadesh Yisrael Melech HaKol Haaretz Mikadesh Yisrael Melech HaKol Haaretz Mikadesh Yisrael V'yom HaZikaron
Amen.
Baruch Atah
Chaim. And while we're standing, we'll turn to page 58, Aleinu L'Shabeach. Shekoach. We're going to turn to page 66 and 67. And you can be seated. The psalm that we say from the beginning of the month of Elul to Hoshana Rabbah is a story of somebody who seems very confident at first, but his confidence is shaken by the way the world is. Let's read it the way we've been reading it. The Lord is my light and my help. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I dread?
Should an army be arrayed against me, I would not fear. Should war beset me, still would I be confident.
One thing I ask of the Lord, for this do I yearn, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all my life, to feel the goodness of the Lord in his sanctuary.
On the day of trouble he will shield me. He will lift me to safety. My head will be high above my foes.
In his tabernacle I will bring offerings of jubilation with chanting and joyous singing.
O Lord, hear my voice when I call. Be gracious to me and answer me.
O Lord, I truly seek you. Do not hide yourself from me. Turn not in anger from your servant.
You have always been my help. Do not forsake me, O God, my deliverer.
Teach me your way, O Lord. Lead me on a straight path. Deliver me not to the will of my enemies.
Trust in the Lord and be strong. Take courage. Kaveh Adonai chazak v'ametzivecha v'kaveh el Adonai.
Mourner's Kaddish is on page 64. Those in mourning or observing a yard site, please rise. And of course, as is the custom here, if you're near somebody who's saying Kaddish, feel free to stand next to that person so that they can feel a little bit of support. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Bi'olma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lomei maya. Yitborach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalah Shmei Kedusha Le'ela u'le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiron b'yoma v'yimru
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shmaya וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Okay. You know, there were no announcements left on my podium.
Okay.
So, just to, if you haven't already heard, if you know anybody who needs a ride to services or anything else we do, we have a program to help you out with that, free rides, free Lyft rides. So you can call Ken Levin or Barry Klatzker or, who else? Jack Zakowski, right? So,
אחד ויחיד כייחודו, נדלו וגם אינסוף לאחדותו. קדמו לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון בגין ראשית לראשיתו. שפט נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. תורת אמת נתן ליעמו אל, היה נביאו נאמן ביתו. צופה ויודע שדרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו. ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפדות מחגגי ישועתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין שם תהילתו. מתים יחייל ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדיין שם תהילתו. שנה טובה.
שנה טובה.
That was really nice.
Here, last row. Is that your new seat? I guess.
שנה טובה. Finally shake hands. Do something.
Hey, Marshall. It's good to see you. No, still here. See you tomorrow.
That's